I'm not going to sit here admiring my looks, which are not anything to be admired. But hello, everybody. This is Tenacious Earl. Been a little bit of a layoff here. Wouldn't expect anybody to be wondering where I've been, but if you did, then what have I been doing? I've been playing a lot of, well, to be truthful, I've been playing quite a bit of PlayStation, Madden as well, which is something that my son got, and so it's kind of like him and I both have been playing it some, and so, but I have been playing. I got second season for Christmas. Showed you some things about that, and that's what I want to do in this video. I am in the very near future planning to get back to some baseball. I thought it was going to be tonight, but this today I was thinking about it, and I was saying there before I'd kind of like to show some, whether it's tutorial at some point. Hi, Derek. I don't think it's going to be tutorial so much tonight, but it sort of is because I'm going to be showing you. I've done some modifications, and I'm still not going to be perfect here because I have to do I have to lay something out here. I was hoping to be prepared, but this time I'm not. I'm about 75% prepared, let's say. So what's happened? So I've kind of continued on this. Hi, Beatles. Well, hello. Thanks for swinging by. Swinging, I assume you mean by the syncopated, dun, 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 like the Lido shuffle or something. But no, anyway. But anyway, so I've been kind of working my way a game at a time. The games take a while. Um, it's one of these things. The game, it, it is such a good game, but it is a real tough game to get in a sitting. Stratomatic baseball, even a super advanced game, you can sit down in an hour. You're probably going to be done. A lot of people might even be done in a half an hour. If you go basic 20 minutes, it's like you can do that. You could roll off 3 games in a night with, 3 game series, and you could probably still use the bathroom twice and, say hello to the missus. But, you know, for this game, this is this is something that you really, I don't know what it is about the intensity of it. It's like all of these play games, there's a certain intensity that comes, at least for maybe if, I know there are a lot of guys that just swear by them. If you go to that forum on Facebook or the Delphi forum, there are guys that just play the heck out of these games, and I like it too. But for me, I really just have to take it in doses. About a quarter at a time is a good sitting, because it really can just be intense. You're doing all these checks, and I will say invariably it seems like I throw 46 or 64 or 55, which means penalty or unusual result, and which usually means penalty, which usually is a little on the frustrating side, because even in real NFL football, when you're watching, every time you see that little yellow thing at the bottom say flag, you're like, oh, why? And it's just like, it's part of the game, and we kind of need to get used to it, but it's really tough too. But other than that, the depth of everything is pretty awesome, and I'm still, maybe if I keep learning getting that flow down, it'll be better as far as the timing goes. But I've almost completely gotten away from the fast action cards, like I was showing you in the game. These guys here, I've pretty much gotten away from those, and I'll show you why in a minute. So let me turn this around. Hi, Mike. So, like I said, if for those who are just coming, my plan is to not be completely stuck on second season, and I do plan to get back to baseball. Excuse my finger there creeping in, but I got to try and get this. Okay. So let's get this out here real quick. All right, so this is the season. I pretty much So the next game in the season, I don't think I'm going to be playing it right away, but maybe I will. I don't know. Like I said, I want to get back to baseball here soon, but it's the Bengals and the Jets. So I'm going to get the Bengals out. The Bengals. And I will say another thing that you find is depending on how good the team is, you end up finding most of the players, but there are some players who are in and out of the team, and the Jets have one of them. So this is where I was being a little bit prepared before coming on here. Okay, so there we go. We got the Bengals and the Jets. Benny and the Jets. No, not really. Little Elton John reference there for all you youngsters. All right. So let's zoom a bit. And let's make some more funny noises. No, just kidding. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is I've decided to devise a little bit of a different system. My system that I use now is I call every offensive play. I consider myself the offensive coordinator for both teams, regardless of the situation. I just call the play. I feel like that's the most realistic. I feel like the offense is usually the one to do the primary interaction within a play. The defense is kind of like molding to that in a way, but even then, I think the defense is. I mean, the defense does make some adjustments, but I think it's more common that the offense would. But let's take the Bengals here first because I've zoomed this in. What I've decided to do is I've come up with my own distribution chart and what I'm calling a distribution chart and a personnel chart. Now, so what I didn't like was I didn't like having to decide. Oh wait, that's the Jets. Excuse me. Give me a second. Grabbed the wrong one. I didn't like the fact that you didn't really have, like, so let's say you have a play and it's for EA, which is the primary wide receiver. Well, it's AJ Green, but, what if AJ Green was hurt that game? I mean, you can go look at the game book, and I've shown you that before, and I've actually printed out a couple pages from it. But let's say, and this is another thing that's weird about this set is like you've got the SB here. This is where the running back's located on the Bengals, whereas on a lot of the teams, it's the running back is under FB. But that's beside the point. What I've decided to do is I've just decided to rename these, but for lack of a better term, what I'm deciding to do is call whoever is, because before what we were doing, if you notice here, these were these numbers that indicate you rolled a d20 to give you an idea of which. So like for an inside run, the first 1 through 3 would be Jeremy Hill, or 1 through 13 would be Jeremy Hill. 14 to 17 runs Rex Burkhead, and then Giovanni Bernard would be 18 to 20. That's fine, but Burkhead hardly had any touches in that game, in game number 1. So what am I going to do about that, okay? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do about it, is I'm going to come up with my own system for doing this. So what I've used now is I've got, let's get it in the camera, that would help. I roll 4 d6s, the decide or die, and the d20 on every roll. It's a lot to roll, but here's what we do. This is the defense. So I pretty much still use this defensive coordinator. If it's first in any, or second in any, or third in 3 or 4 yards, I'm using this column. This for short yardage, I use this column. For longer yardage, I use this. So that's pretty much the way I've pretty much cut the whole game down to that, although maybe when I get to a blowout, I may just go to straight passing or straight short yardage defense calls. I haven't had too many of those yet. So that's the yellow one. So I always think of, that's the Steelers, that Steelers heavy defense, known for their defense. Lavender, I don't know. The lavender is this D6 personnel. So if I roll this, what's going to happen is that based on the roll here, you roll this, and actually you'd roll a decider die. You'll roll them all, but if you need the decider die, where that comes into play is these two formations. So this is what I decided to do. For instance, if you go to the playtime percentages, let's bring this out here. Can you read those? Let's zoom this in even further. Okay. So you can see LaFell and AJ Green both played almost 100% of the snaps. So those two guys pretty much. Now the trouble is that I would probably not use two ends, two wideouts on what I'm calling heavy personnel. But what I do is I basically have those guys as constants on the outside. They're going to basically be your wideouts for almost every play for the Cincinnati Bengals in week 1. Okay, then what we can do is, the next most important position I would say is your running back, which I call FB regardless of the team sheet there. And if you look here, Jeremy Hill ran 51%, Bernard 49%. So how did I account for that? Well, I actually ran with Hill a little bit more in this game. He's going to play every heavy down, but I also have Bernard playing 2/3 of the D6s and the spread formation. Okay, so I figure, and I'll explain to you how you determine the spread and the heavy. But I probably could have. What I could have done was given Bernard another slot here, maybe. But let's just go with this, because Bernard is going to run fewer times than Hill on average anyway, at least in week 1. Next up is the tight end. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky, because Uzoma, I didn't even realize this guy had played, but his name is CJ Uzoma. Not a big Bengals fan, but he played almost 90%. And then for the Jets, it's funny because Kellen Davis played 76%, but he played in 8 of the 16 games for the Jets and had 1 target, no catches. So it's weird to figure out how, and he has no rating over here at all on the Jets page. So how am I going to account for that? I'm not sure. Part of what I'm doing here, I feel like, is it kind of feels history maker in a way, and it's going to lead into something I'll describe a little later. But let's continue here with Cincinnati's EC, which is more or less the tight end. So Uzoma played 90%, so I put him on everything as well as the heavy. I think he had 2 catches. I'll show you what happens here in a minute, but you know, if he gets 5 catches, I'm not really going to be that worried about it. It's just kind of the way it goes. Again, this system isn't perfect. It would probably be better if each team, maybe even each week, you personalized what I'm going to show you in a little bit as far as rolling the D20. So that way you kind of narrowed down where the targets went. Because some quarterbacks will target wideouts more than running backs and tight ends, kind of the heavy H-backs, fullbacks, all the yada yada. Others are going to be more of a screen, West Coast, try to really spread the ball around and use all of their targets. And so, you know, you could really do that. But in this case, I'm just trying to like boil this down into something that hopefully gets to being relatively realistic, but you know, within reason, because you can't just spend a whole lot of time you know, frittering around trying to fix everything exactly the way it was in real life. So lastly, we have this SB, which is really, for Cincinnati, is the FB. So that's basically fullbacks and tight ends. Now, again, let's take a look at, I'll just raise it here so that way I don't have to keep adjusting things. Ryan Hewitt, he was actually the starter, correct? Let's see. Ryan Hewitt, as an H-back, was a starter in this game for the Bengals. But if you notice here, he only played in 12% of the snaps. This playtime percentage is the second to last page in the game book if you go to the NFL site. So in my mind, this is what we're going to do with him. Isn't SB supposed to mean scat back or spread back? That's what I thought. I was looking at the front page and it said something about there aren't really any fullbacks anymore, and so there are a couple of teams that use this as a fullback spot, and I guess the Bengals are one. I guess I would have preferred just because it makes planning things out a little easier, have this section here over under SB, basically make it consistent. Because if I show you the Jets here, the Jets, the running backs, the guys that basically get most of the carries are here. Now you do have some wide receivers who do some. You also have Bilal Powell, who's not a wide receiver, but he can kind of be a wideout. He's got some running numbers too, but that's what I'm getting at, is it makes it a little odd to do that. So what I did was I just kind of flipped them here. So Ryan Hewitt, he's going to be in on the heavy, because you're going to probably use a fullback in a heavy set or an H-back or whatever. He's also going to be on the first roll of the if you roll a 1 on your D6, you're going to take everybody that's in this first row. So AJ Green will be the wide out, LaFell would be the other wide out, Hewitt would be an H-back, you'd have Jeremy Hill at the quote-unquote tailback position, and then Uzoma would be the tight end. So it's really more or less a two tight end set. A tight end, and then we'll say a fullback or H-back or whatever you want to call it. Kind of like a strong formation, if you would want to call it that, strong offset. Then you got number 2. I've used Croft here because Croft, he's got about 12% as well, but I'm only going to give him this one here. And then Tyler Boyd gets the rest, 3 through 6. And he's also going to get this spread offense in the EC. So basically, instead of this being a tight end, he would be a third wide out. And then you end up even with a fourth wide out here with James Wright, who is another wide receiver. He got about 10% of the snaps. So Croft got 12. That's why he gets one slot. This is like 16 or a little less probably. Boyd ended up in almost 80%. So that's why he's got 4, which is 66%. And then you throw in another maybe 10. All right. So a couple things. How does this work? So we roll both this and the decider die. So let's say it is, I've got a little description right down here, and let me zoom in a bit. For normal down and distance, which I consider to be first and second down from 3 yards to 12 yards to go. So if it's first and 12, for whatever reason, somebody got a 3-yard gain, but there was a holding call, or no, 7-yard gain, but 8-yard gain, but there was a holding call like right at the end of it, then you would subtract 10, you'd have a first and 12. I would still consider that a normal down and distance. You can get 4 yards on the 3 downs and still get your first down that way. I would say third and fourth down, I'd say 3 to 5 yards to go. That's kind of a normal down and distance. You're hoping to get about 5 yards on a gain. So you would just use what comes up on the D6. I could also see maybe with score effects, if you're behind by 14, maybe you wouldn't want to stay so much with the normal down and distance. You might want to go to something, you might want to use a more flighty set. So, fleet-footed set is what I mean. So, you roll it, you get a 4. So we come down here and, let's say it's first and 10, you'd have AJ Green, Tyler Boyd. So you'd have basically a 3 wide receiver set with Jeremy Hill as your running back and Uzoma as the tight end. Okay. So now, long down and distance. So it's going to be first and second down greater than that 12 yards. So basically long yardage. Or third or fourth down greater than 5. So it's 3rd and 7. I would call that long down and distance. What you would do is you would roll both. Well, you're always going to roll the decider die, but the decider die would basically tell you whether you're going to switch to the spread set, or if you're going to use the D6. So this time I didn't get it, so I would use basically a 2 tight end set. Okay, if I roll it and it shows, okay, so that means I'm gonna use the spread formation. I just figured there are going to be times in long distance situations where you're going to have a second tight end, and I didn't want to always eliminate the tight end in those situations, because a lot of teams, that's their go-to guy. I'm thinking Kyle Rudolph can be Thielen is a go-to guy with Minnesota, but in this season, I just played the Cleveland Browns, and I'd say Gary Barnidge was a guy that was targeted. Greg Olsen for the Carolina Panthers is one who gets targeted quite a bit. So I didn't want to completely give up on having a wideout or a tight end in that formation. And actually, you might argue that in a team like Carolina, you would put Greg Olsen maybe the whole way through here. Maybe you'd even remove him in the heavy set and use a different tight end just to give him a spell, because he may not be your best blocker when it comes to helping bust open holes for your tailback. But so short down and distance, again, same thing. You roll the decider die tells whether you go to the heavy set, and of short down and distance, basically any down less than 3 yards to go. So, so let's say you had a second down and 2. If the decider die isn't there, there you go. Then, it might give you the option to have a 3 wide receiver set, and you might still run out of that, but it's just going to give you a little different option than just going heavy and trying to run it. I mean, you could still, so like the heavy set, what I've done for most of these teams, well, I haven't done a lot of the teams, but the ones that I have done so far, I've tried to use I've consulted both the number of targets, the amount of play time, and also kind of who is considered their go-to receiver to decide whether or not they're going to have, which wideout would be the one who would get this designation, who is going to be in this heavy set. And so in the case of the Bengals, I used A.J. Green. Now, here's the other thing that I didn't do in my last game, and I probably will do when I play this one, is you could call the play before you roll the personnel, or you could roll the personnel. Let's say you have a 3rd and 2, and you have, Tyler Boyd. Let's take this. So you end up with Tyler Boyd as your slot back, or whatever you want to call it, SB. So he's a wide receiver, really, and when you look at his numbers, he's a 0 run, so probably, now you do have Jeremy Hill, he's a better runner, but you may want to think about going to the pass, because that formation is probably not going to be one, if he gets checked, if he's a 2 run and he's not, or if he's checked and he's a 0 run, then you're going to lose yardage probably, or just barely get a gain at all. So, now this also doesn't account for, let's see. Well, this is a little different here, because yeah, and none of these other tight ends were used. There might be some teams that have a wide receiver that gets you at 1 in the running column, and you might say to yourself, well, I'd rather have, I don't know. Let me see. The Jets. Let's take a look at the Jets. Do they have somebody? Well, for instance, Safarian Jenkins. So Sharon Peak was on a pass play for a tight end. If you may want to avoid him as a tight end in your short yardage offense, and instead make sure that Safarian Jenkins is the guy you're using. And the funny thing is, he's actually pretty good. He was very good in 2017 in the passing game. I'd say he was actually probably more of a target than a lot of these guys. But in any regard, there's just some strategy. Okay, so what do we do with this? All right. this is sort of the second half of my creation. So this is what I use as what I'm calling my D20 distribution chart. And at least at the moment, this is going to be universal, that I use basically for any game that I'm going to play. So how does this work? Okay. So these are the rolls of the D20. So every play, I end up rolling a D20. What I wanted to do was make it much more accurate for each game, who would be getting a ball. So I decided to do, for passing, that long and medium would have similar distributions. Short and screen would have similar distributions. You're going to see fewer targets to the running back and to the third wide receiver. I figured there'd be so there's 3 targets out of 20 to each of those guys. There's 4 for the tight end. The tight end does get targeted downfield, but probably not as much as the wideouts. So the EA and EB are going to be the primary targets. They each get 5 rolls. So 25%, 25%, 15, 15, and 20. Okay, so for the this is where I really came up with the idea, is that I wanted to have it in a way that would I thought at first would equally give 4s for each of these eligible receivers. So 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%. For the shortened screen, I think I can feel pretty confident this is a pretty decent. It's not going to be that way for every team, and at some games you might want to exploit, I don't know, the middle linebacker, for instance. Maybe he's horrible at pass coverage, and you might want to throw it to the tight end more because he's deficient. I mean, I guess in theory, you could always overrule this role if you were really, and this is not for, if you're going to play head-to-head against somebody, then you would just be choosing, I mean, you have to, in the rules it says you have to tell the personnel package to your opponent ahead of time. So, you're going to have certain personnel that you're going to tell, and then, you could choose who you're throwing to, because let's say, that, and some of that's just, hand waving, when it comes right down to it and you use the game book, does it really check the matchup for, the tight end? No, it doesn't really. It does in certain cases, like you have 64 potential rolls on these, or 66, excuse me, potential rolls on the D6s. A couple of those checks are going to get, just because it's random, it's going to get the guy that might be covering the tight end. There's going to be some that are going to gauge off of the quarterback's completion percentage and yada yada. So that's the passing game. For the running game, I kind of felt like there needed to be some modifications because teams with a mobile quarterback versus teams with a wideout that will do some outside runs. And again, this is somewhat open to interpretation. Each team is going to be a little different. So mobile quarterback, I would say neither of the teams that I have here really qualify for that. Last game I had, Carson Wentz has some mobility, but, like a guy like, maybe if you use Tyrod Taylor the right way, Cam Newton, mobile quarterbacks, they're going to get a certain percentage, and they're allowed. Marcus Mariota, they can actually run some of them can run 3 times a half if they're given that rating. And so that's where I just figured for mobile quarterback, and if you hit their mark, you can just always flip that back to the tailback. I also give a very small percentage on the outside runs to either the and what this is, when you see a slash, I tend to either consider, that's what I mean by that is either if a team doesn't have a wideout that has a run rating, then it would be the fullback. If they do, then I would use the decide or die to decide whether it's if it's a dot, it goes to the left. Or no, if it's a dot, it goes to the right. If it's not, it goes to the left. It would be fullback. So so I tried I tried to bias these things with pass, balance, and run. I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with that. Let me think. How did I decide upon that? I guess I figured with a pass happy offense, you're probably going to have more of an opportunity for maybe a dual running back set, or you might end up with more. Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, this is the type of thing where if you don't have any, let's see, New York, do they have any SBs with? Yeah, I mean they got Robbie Anderson, they got Bilal Powell, and again, you could kind of go to the team offense. They're -2, so they're slightly pass happy. You know, these ratings here. This is pass. I would say anything from here over is pass happy. This is run happy, and this is medium or moderate, balanced. So, so I figured 70% with a mobile quarterback goes to the running back, and you got 20% to the quarterback and 10%. Really, it's 5 to the wide out and 5% more to the fullback. So more like 75%, 20% and 5%. So I cut it down to 60 for pass and balance offenses. And then the run offense, because usually in a run offense, you have a run offense because you've got a relatively dominant tailback that you're trying to ride. You know, I gave him 70% here. And I also figure that if you have a run offense, you're more likely to have maybe a fullback that gets some carries as well. And I just gave this little sliver for the, and you know, if there are cases where you've got run based offenses that are going to have a quarterback run. I guess in that case, if you have a quarterback that is going to run, I would just say automatically default to the mobile quarterback. Inside runs, I figure that, you know, the mobile quarterback doesn't really try to. I mean, they do. There are some quarterback draws, but in this game, you don't really have. You have a quarterback sneak, but not a draw. So I decided to go 80% primary running back. Actually, it's really 90 because this is a fullback slash. So this is with the decide or die. So you really get to 90% of the main guy. And all the way down to, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I still have to think through this, but I'm also kind of play testing it in the process to see how it works. I feel like it works pretty decent, but it's by no means what I would call ready for prime time. Maybe it is. It's ready for my prime time. How about that? Okay. So in effect, what I have done is I have eliminated the use of sort of the dots for, I mean, what you still have to do is, so I take my chart here and I just, you know, knock off any guys who are not active. So you've got like Cody Core is inactive for this game, so we can just use the dry erase marker here with these plastic sheets. You got Denard, Darquez Denard is inactive. He's also a backup safety. And you've got guard Westerman. Doesn't look like he played at all. Hopkins, no, that's another guard. Trey Hopkins. My eyes are bugging me a little bit here. Defensive tackle Deshaun Williams. We'll get rid of him. And then Tyler Eifert didn't play, so we'll just scratch him off too. So basically, you just want to get guys that didn't play. And you could also, now you can't, it's tough to really scratch off a guy like A.J. McCarron because he didn't play, but if you get an injury, unless Dalton is exempted from injuries, which I haven't looked. I will now. Cincinnati, yes, he is. So he's not exempted, but there's an additional role that you do for injuries. So let's get the Jets done here too, and then I'll show you what I do for the defense, because I have a system for that too. So let's see. So Hackenberg's not even in this list, but he was inactive. Bryce Petty is too. So Geno Smith is the backup in this game. Fun, right? Let's see. Did they not have a backup QB in this one? Oh, yeah, he didn't play. Sorry, I was looking up here in the substitutions. Bryce Petty, running back Pope. That doesn't look like he played at all. Roberts, cornerback. Daryl Roberts. The other thing I found is that these dry erase markers, the one that I use here, it gets a little, it's tougher to rub off after a couple days. I guess maybe that's common. I don't know. Linebacker Jenkins, where are you? Jordan Jenkins. So he was a starter. Play has him listed as a starter throughout the season, but in this game he won't be. So we'll have to do a little analysis to determine who will take his place. Tackle Brandon Shell, right there he is. Well, you're going to sit up in the press box today. And Bowman, there's no Bowman here, so we'll just leave that alone. All right. So what do we do now? All right, so this is where I also have a little bit of modification. We'll start with Cincinnati. And I got to find my pen. Oh, it's upstairs. All right, let's find a different pen. Where did all my pens go? Oh. Hideo. All right, little Paula Cole. Apologies for that. Unless you're a Paul Cole fan, then I'll keep going. No, just kidding. Yeah, I need a piece of paper instead. What was nice is that my parents, I had a little notepad that worked out really well. Well, let's make do with best we can here. What am I going to do? I was going to use these note cards, but I don't know if it's going to work. Let's try. So, what do we have? We have, so we have 4 defensive packages for each team. You have pass, you have safe, you have run, you have blitz, right? Now I got a little gob of stuff with this brand new pen. So pass, safe, run, blitz. We're going to go A, B, C, D. Yeah, this isn't going to work. Let's see. Notebook paper. That would be in my Phillies replay. I got notebook paper. Let me see. Do I have any in my... You know what I'll do? I'll just use this for now. This will work. I'm going to transfer this to something else. I may even put it in the computer like I did the other list. But okay, so... And let me get rid of this. Move it out of the way. Let's zoom out a bit. There we go. So this is going to be the Cincinnati defense chart. Hope I spelled it right. All right, so we got pass, safe, run, and blitz. You've got A, B, C, and D. So that's your defensive backfield. And then you've got it's a 4-3 E F G, and then you see we got pass, safe, run, blitz, and then you've got H, I, J, and K. Okay, so this is how I do this. I again look at this sheet here, and so we're done with the offensive chart. So I'm going to go ahead and fold it up here a bit. So we have some guys here that have played over 90%. So up through about here, or maybe even the defensive end there, I would pretty much play them in all of the setups. So you got Pac-Man Jones here, and so we're going to have him play in all of them. We've got George Aloka. He is the free safety. You have strong safety Sean Williams. And you have, let's see, Drake or Patrick. So that defensive backfield is going to remain that way for the entire game. And you have a linebacker, Vincent Ray, who played 94, so we will put him at middle linebacker. And let's see, there's Carlos Dansby as well, one of the outside linebackers. And I'm only going to do this for one of the teams because I'm kind of running out of time here. So, what now? So there are also some little indications in parentheses here as far as how guys are used. Now, what I found in this game, because Dansby is playing 100% of the snaps, he's not getting changed here with Josh Shaw. Instead, so let's see, did Shaw play? He played 73%, but what he probably did, because, let's see, where's Burfict? Did Burfict not play? Or did I fold it? No? Where is he? Was he suspended? Maybe he was suspended for taking it. Oh, that's right. He was suspended because of the cheap shot against the Steelers, if I recall correctly. So what we can do now is we can go and look at the starters on defense. And so who started? You have you actually had Shaw as the defensive starter at that position there. So they basically went with a nickel package right off the bat, it looks like. So let's see. Shaw played 73, so let's have him on and then on the run defense, we will bring in, let's see, which linebacker. We'll bring in Ray Malaluga. All right. So basically when you have these roles, and so it says a run defense and it checks G, you wouldn't want to use Shaw, you'd use Malaluga, and this will absolutely. And the other thing you could do is, like, let's say you had an 80% guy. What you could do is you could have, let's say Shaw was at 80%. That means on some of the run plays he might even be playing. So you could use like the decider die to decide whether it's Malaluga or Shaw. And actually, one thing I could do here, let's see. 11%. Was there another guy? I don't know. I'll worry about it later. But let's see. So you've got Pico 68%, and you have Clark at 17. So we're going to say, because it says Will Clark in passing downs on J, we're going to put him in for pass only. we're going to do Demata Pico for every other down. Let's see. So you have Carlos 73 and 68. So basically, they are doing some. They do some rotation. Let's see, what's the other? So Hunt. So Michael Johnson played 85%. Let's put him. It looks like John may be a better pass rusher. So let's have Michael Johnson, Hunt, Margaret Hunt. We're gonna have them share that time, and we're gonna have Johnson be on blitz, pass and safe. And you got Margus Hunt. We're gonna have him rotate with. Gonna have him rotate some with Dunlap, and we will see Dunlap in passing situations is probably better. He's got a better chance of. Safe, we'll say with run. And then what are we gonna do here? We will have. Let's do Margus Hunt here too. So we'll have him in there on. Let's see, what does that get Dunlap? 79%. No, we can't do that to him. We'll have him in a blitz. So we'll do that, and then now we just need Geno Atkins, Pat Sims, and Sims is 38%. Sims is rated for pass. Atkins runs. We're going to use Atkins for running for blitz. We'll use Pat Sims as a. We'll use Geno Atkins half the safe. So that's basically how I do. That's how I do my defenses here. So if you were to just do a play 1st and 10, let's say it's the New York offense. So where is New York offense? Start, and this, let's roll all dice here. Hopefully you can see it. So let's see. So we got and I shouldn't even look at that. Let's read this. Let's start by rolling these two guys. 1st and 10. You're gonna get the 2. So for the Jet, that's gonna be basically your main guys. It's gonna be Brand Marshall, Quincy Enunwa, Matt Forte, Kellen Davis, Eric Decker. So pretty standard. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna choose an inside run with Forte, probably. And so 10, you check here. 10 is definitely inside run. Is for Forte. So you go to 51 in the book. My books are here. You can see 51 right there. So I said an inside run, and this is against a blitz. And at 51, so we check the first quarter, so we check B against run. Let's say it's a 4th quarter, a G against run. Okay, well, that's going to be Malaluga. So we go to Malaluga. 51, is he a 0 run? Malaluga, no, he's a 1 run. So that would be a no game pulled down by a blitzing defensive back. So that's kind of how it works. If it had been a safe defense, we would on with Shaw there. So, right. Somehow I have a voicemail here. I'm going to have to check that out. So I'm going to sign off. So that's basically some of the advancements I've done so far. I hope this has been helpful. I will keep you informed on how this goes. I do want to get back to some good old-fashioned baseball here pretty soon. Maybe later tonight, probably this week. Oh, certainly this weekend.